This is Slim and Light, and today we have the return of the guest who created the most controversial episode of the last season. We currently have a different episode going on that is causing some controversy with someone also called Patrick. So maybe it's that name that causes it, right? So some very impactful world events happened since we had him last on, and I think it's very important to get the views of someone like him on those matters to see whether we can see his point better or even possibly find some common ground. So thanks for joining, Patrick.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate you guys having me again. And speaking about the world events and what's been going on today. First of all, Trump back is in his office. He's back in presidency, and the plans that he has for the future is actually similar to what we have spoken last episode that what we had about, as you said, it was controversial, certain views, certain belief points. And I believe from what I've seen with Trump, I'm not too much into politics, but I do view what the most important parts are. As most of us do, we end up scrolling on Facebook, on Instagram. You can watch the news. It might pop up a few times. You pique an interest, you look into it. And from what I see, Trump is actually following the same views of what I've mentioned. If actually he's actually going very strict measures on people who start following those views, which is interesting because he's only go back into the office now, and who knows what lies ahead in the next 4 years of what's going to happen. Um, but yeah, go ahead. You wanted to ask me a question. That was really the first that came to my mind that speaking of world occurrences, this is something, and there's another one. But what did you want to ask me, brother?
No. I was just saying, we were originally meant to have a debate between yourself and someone who would be like the opposite to your every view, but for this moment in time, we'll put that aside and schedule it for a later time. And like you said already, Donald Trump is president again. And, you touched on it a little bit, but it would be great if you could kind of maybe address the reasons that you think that he won the presidential election this time around.
Well, first of all, speaking of your first point about the lady who was meant to kind of have a head-on-head talk about two people, I guess as the video was controversial, and there was a lady who was on the other side of the controversy. It is a pity, but I'm sure eventually it will happen. I'm sure the audience would love to see it as well. But going back as well with the Donald Trump, um, I believe, speaking on behalf of even us as Christians, um, as we spoke before of certain views and certain things that should be in order, God's order, as we would see as Christians. What I see from Donald Trump is that, first of all, he wants to cut off this whole idea of I identify, especially now speaking openly with everybody, not to cause any form of offense or to make someone feel a certain way, but an absurdity of identity. Of one moment I am Sam, next moment I'm Samantha, next moment I'm a fox, next moment I'm a knife, next moment I should be vetted, next moment, just there's always at any glimpse of a second, whatever feels good to them or whatever imagination they have in their minds, they are whatever they believe. At that point, then if they want to go into a child's playground and just play where it's meant to be only from age 1 and 3, it could be a 50-year-old man, but he can say, hey, this is what I am. I believe this. You have to believe it. And you can clearly see he's not standing up for that. He's not going to allow America to go into a path like that, because if you look very closely at other countries, if you look at India, Russia, many different countries, none of them are following these kind of principles. All of them are avoiding it. And some of them are even laughing at America because of what's going on. For especially Putin and so on and so forth, they find it as a joke. This is destroying the own country on the inside. Um, so Trump, he himself, for me personally, speaking as you're speaking to me, and um, as I am a religious man, as we all know, personally, I believe it's a great thing that Trump is back in office, and I believe a lot of people can agree who are on the standpoint of my views. I believe it's very great. I believe we have these 4 years now where I hope things go back the way they should be. A order, no confusion, no new things that don't go logically with common sense at that point, the way life should be in order. And I believe he's going to bring that order back.
That I think most people can probably agree is a good thing has been Trump's movement towards cleaning out the American diet. A lot of ban on certain ingredients. I know you're big into your nutrition. With the involvement of the Kennedy family. Sorry, I'm blanking on his name currently. What's Jake?
Was it Robert or something?
Thank you. Yes, I think he's the
Junior
one that's
something. RFK.
Or FK. Thank you very much. Yeah, he's spearheading this kind of movement to clean up the American people's diets, or at least give them better options by removing a lot of the harmful chemicals in food. And then the next thing, I know Elon Musk is getting a lot of, he's a bit controversial at the moment too for a lot of people, but he's obviously cleaning out the office in maybe a way the government has never seen before, and just treating it like a business, removing jobs that don't make sense. There's a lot of, obviously there's good happening, but the problem with Trump, I guess, is he's a very polarizing character. I'm curious, do you think any of that is maybe causing a split or divide in Ireland or in the West in general? Because I was just saying to Obi before we started, I saw some photos of protests happening in Dublin, and there was a lot of posters of Trump, and I was like, Trump's not even involved. Like, what's happening here? But he's being used as kind of an ideology, as a, you're either left or right. I guess I'm just curious, do you see any of that kind of happening in Ireland at the moment? Kind of the stuff that Trump's doing, do you think that may enter into the Irish culture as well?
Well, I will say this. If there's any country that has everyone's eyes around the world when it comes to presidency or any form of involvement or anything that happens, is always America. America has always been the center eye of the world when it comes to anything that happens involved. Not everybody knows who's going to become president in Africa or, Zimbabwe or whatever it might be. Everybody's attention is on America. And any culture or any certain new thing that happens in America, we can see that it's actually evolved and grown. Any form of new trends, any form of everything. So it has been, and I believe it's been for quite a while, that America has always been the top country where we see when it's involved in entertainment, when it's involved in trends, when it's involved in power, politics, army, everything. America's always in everything, I've noticed. And it's very easy, because of America being so big, for it to spread across. And I believe that's what's happened as well with many views, as we've spoken before, of the LGBTQ, of this identity thing, of these kind of world views that have only been new and implemented this past, I don't want to say necessarily a decade. The homosexuality has kind of grown in the decades afterwards, when it was able to. Well, President Obama allowed it, and then it grew, and from there you could say. But I'd say more in about the last rough guess about these 5 years. I could say 5, 6 years is when we actually start seeing this development. And I believe that's all started as the pinpoint of America. So I'm now, to be honest with you personally, I did see there was a protest. I personally didn't really, I was busy with work. I never really got involved into it. I'm working late hours, so when I come home, it's late. I personally have never actually looked into it much. I did see there was a protest. I never saw a Donald Trump photo, but if you have, the only common idea that I can, some common sense idea that I can think of is probably the involvement of, because what America does now influences everybody. If America gets involved, for example, with even Ukraine, that can influence everybody. Because, okay, America wants to help Ukraine, but then Russia has other people beside them and say, hey, if you get involved, we're going to add more armaments. They have their own allies. And from then on, a whole war can just happen out of nowhere. So it's many things. It's many things. I can't really speak personally on that matter, as you mentioned, because I'm not sure what the process was exactly about. I can only speculate. But America is the center point. Whatever America does, it is very influenced around the world.
I think in
just Jamie,
sorry.
just 1
Yeah, go
second.
ahead.
I think regarding RFK, so there might be some positive regarding him. I think there was something about food dyes or whatever, kind of helping people not get sick. However, from my point of view, it was a net bad to have RFK added because he's an very extreme version of. It would have been better if they had put Joe Rogan in RFK's seat because RFK is an extreme version of Joe Rogan. Like he's he's not a stupid person, but he's extremely involved in paranoid thinking that leads him to think certain ways about tackling issues that can be solved very easily, and he goes about it a bit differently. I can see people that follow him, why they follow him, because of course, he brings about change, etc. And of course, I can see why Trump actually put him in his cabinet because a lot of people were following him. There is a positive of him, helping things regarding food diets or ingredients or whatever. I just wanted to make clear that Jamie isn't necessarily supporting his entire views just because he agrees with him removing ingredients. Wouldn't you say so, Jamie?
What, that I'm not supporting RFK?
Are you?
The guy who I asked you what his name was.
Okay, no, because I just wanted to.
I don't like politicians, bro. Full stop. I don't support anyone. Do I? From the small amount that I saw about RFK and what he wanted to, his passion for kind of wanting to make sure that food was safe for the youths, that seemed like a positive.
It is. It is a positive. It is a positive.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I know much about RFK or do I support him. No, I would say that I'm just mostly talking. The reason I brought that up was because I was saying that like I can see that there's some kind of good happening, let's say, in Trump's corner this time compared to last time.
It is definitely way more organized for sure. There is this. What is this thing? Something 2025 something. What is it? Plan something. Like they clearly have, to whoever their opposition is, to the anger and shock of the opposition, they have a lot of things already in place, like Senate or Congress. I don't even know how that really works, but all of them are basically like right wing. Like they have everything figured out and planned months and years ahead to a point that he can get all kinds of things passed. So for sure, from an organizational and planning standpoint, they are light years ahead of the last Trump administration. So straight up technical standpoint, for sure, it's, hey, this time around, they're not doing any half stepping. I was wondering, is there anything that you currently see with Trump that you disagree with in any way, or think maybe he has gone too far? You said there's 4 years more ahead, and that is true. Is there something currently that you see that he should maybe change his tune about that you disagree with?
Speaking honestly, as I said, I know bits of bits. I don't know much about Trump to say everything. But what I do know of him, what I do know is that he loves his country. From what I've seen, he loves his country. He's passionate about his country. Even of a moment of death, as we all saw, he almost got shot by a sniper, which for me, that moment was very shocking that sniper was even, I don't know how he even managed to be in that spot. I almost feel like that was set up, honestly, but that's a whole different topic. It was just very crazy how he was able to so freely be on that roof with so many snipers around that nobody saw him in plain sight. But I digress. When it comes to Trump, the only thing I see that I've seen has only been positives. Speaking of the fact that, going by the same understanding, which again, as I said, I believe is, and I know through my heart is common sense, that there is men and there is women. There's a certain role of each part, as you discussed before. He has spoken of Christ. He has spoken of wanting America to go back to Christ. I don't know much about his own personal belief in Christ, if it is genuine or not. Really, only the Lord knows a relationship with him, or if someone who is really with him. I'm not with him every day to know. There is people who say, "Oh, I'm with Jesus," but in their hearts they're far away. So I can't really say. What I have seen is definitely a passion. I've seen a care for Christ. So I'm not sure. I can't comment on that 100%. But I see attributes and values and views. And I think the most important thing at the end of the day, when there is someone in charge of a country, is someone who cares about the country. And the fact that he shows the passion and care that he does, and speaking, as you guys know, for me, health is number one. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I eat very clean. I avoid as much as I can. And for me, health is my priority. To go even a step further, I believe health is the only medicine, realistically. I believe medication should only be taken, pills and so on and so forth, when it's a very dire situation. Unless that, you should focus on just eating healthy products. And those benefits of those will heal you in time. And in general, will keep you in full health. But that's another topic. But the fact that they are doing that, and they are working on making America great again. Because if you look at, for example, when it comes to Europe and America, as Jamie mentioned, in America there's a lot of artificial products and things that are very chemically and can destroy human body that they put in their food. In Europe, I believe over 52 of those products, something like that. It was a big number, 48, 50, something like that, that are banned in Europe. In America, it's not, and they put it in their foods. And it's even to the point where I've heard stories. I cannot say they're 100% true, but there's been stories, for example, in a place called Chick-fil-A, where people would go crazy about the chicken. They were so addicted where it wasn't normal. It wasn't like, oh, it's the best food in the world. They were just so addicted to the point where they were shooting each other. It was on the news, and they were killing each other just for a lump of chicken. So um, who knows what they're putting in those products at the end of the day? How is it affecting the person? What type of addiction they're getting from it? I have no idea. There's many various stories and different things. But speaking of Trump, he is cleaning the mess that America has laid out on itself since Obama has left, and especially with Biden too. I believe Biden had his head on his shoulders about 10 years before he became with the presidency. He spoke well, he acted well, he was fine. But then afterwards, then he wasn't there. He was there, but he wasn't there, if you get me. And I feel like America had a massive drop because of that, in its power and everything else. I'm surprised America wasn't attacked during with Biden, to be honest with you, because I feel like it was very vulnerable because of Biden. But since Obama, the last, I think, 3 months of his election, I believe the moment when he allowed homosexuality to be a thing where you can, again, this is controversial to everybody, but to allow it for men and women to get married and do whatever else. From then on, then everything started to fall. That's when then certain things were pushed to the point of this day, as we see now. I mean, speaking of world occurrences, very briefly, because I don't want to go too off topic. Now it's been so pushed that this LGBTQ is being forced in schools of Ireland today. There's been a person an old man in Mead, very shortly I'll say the story because it came to mind. This old man in Mead didn't want to teach this. These are kids. These are 4 or 5 years of age, 6, 7. I don't think 4 or 5, sorry, but about 6, 7 years of age, and they want to teach them about LGBTQ. You can be whatever you want. Teaching even sexual things where we didn't learn till the age of 12, which made sense because of our puberty. That's when puberty hits us for everybody, guaranteed. Depends on everybody's body. But usually 12, 10, 11, 12, it starts to hit you. That's when we've learned. That's when it's been fine. But now the teaching at the age of 5 or 6 and teaching of same sex and, intersex and all these different things that it's becoming a mess. And Trump himself wants to clear that out. And I believe if he clears it out, it will start being clearer around the world as well, which is the influence, as I said, of America and Trump that it has in the world. If America does something, it is quite common that other countries like Canada and, other, in mind, Australia, so on, will start to follow, or even Europe, Ireland, so on and so forth. But again, with Trump, I only see positives. I haven't, from what I know of, I haven't seen anything negative in any of his speeches, his behavior. He stood up for the country, right? So when there was other countries trying to, push a bit of pressure, he told them basically to back off. He told them, hey, you don't know who you're playing with, So you need someone like that in the office. You know what I mean? You can't have someone like Biden in the office who doesn't know from his left foot to his right to protect and defend the country and help it to grow. But Trump himself was someone who did defend the country, wants to change the country to grow better in nutritional value and health, because America is the most obese country right now in all of the countries because of the food and the chemicals and so on. Want to turn around and change massively in the next 4 years. It's a lot of hard work, but he's willing to do it. And he doesn't have to do it. He could just, there was interviews of him saying, people have asked him, you have so much money. Why are you doing this? He's at an age. He's old. He could just relax now, go off to the beach, or do anything per se when you have that much money. He didn't have to go back. But he saw the mess of America after this is his second time being elected. He saw the mess of America afterwards. He himself, even after almost being assassinated, some people, they're afraid, oh no, and they really back off. No, Trump stood up high and strong and said, "We're going to fight," and that's what America needs. I believe any government, that's what should be taking care of the country, is someone like that. So for me personally, I am very happy to see that America will be great again. I don't see any negatives.
Speaking of personalities that got into government that either have the money and don't need to, or aren't really politicians but are looking into it. I'm sure you've heard the news that Conor Gregor is pushing
I
forward
have.
to possibly be, Taoiseach of Ireland, or I don't know if it was a Taoiseach or president, but
President.
was it
Yeah.
president? Oh, that's bloody.
Yes.
Would you be in favor for something like that? Because again, if we're talking about, let's say, men who kind of show, that they're, strong archetypes of men. I mean, Conor McGregor is being very vocal about certain things at the moment. Would he have your support in that kind of same sense, or how would you
Mm.
feel?
It's difficult to say. Speaking openly about McGregor, I did like him a lot, especially in his early years of doing MMA, and I do like him. But I guess everyone does have their downfalls. Everyone does make their mistakes, and I believe he does. He definitely has a heart for Ireland, and he definitely wants to. Ireland to be in a better place. I mean, even in his MMA run, he never went and said, "I only me, 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 me." He always brought his country with him. He always said, "We are the Irish. We are going to conquer. We are going to defeat." He already had a heart for Ireland from the very beginning. This is not a new. This is not new. He even said, if you remember that famous quote that he said, it's very well known for any MMA fan and so on, that we're not here to take part. We're here to take over, right? And the key word there was plural. He always came with the Irish flag. He always had his heart for Ireland. And if his heart, now keep in mind, it all depends on how he runs it. Again, the heart is what matters the most. If his heart is really, truly for the country, compared to what we're seeing now, I mean, you yourself now are in Dubai, there may be some things you might not know. I'm actually working in construction, and I've been doing many different things where I've been making apartments and houses specifically only for Ukrainians. There was a full road all the way down. This is a full road. We're not talking one house. We're talking a whole row of roads down being built today for Ukraine, right? Which the house can be take, no one knows, 2 years or 3 years, but it's being built today still for Ukraine, right? Where Ukraine has already taken most of the houses. Now, I have nothing against Ukraine. I am not racist of any country. I have nothing against them. But I believe how Ireland played their strings are not correct. I understand the idea of, okay, you're helping the other people and your care. The government has many benefits for people who are in need, mothers who are in need, people of low financial incomes in need, and medical help and so on. And I respect that, and that's great. And there's many benefits in Ireland. I cannot go past that. But at the end of the day, the biggest, most important thing in anyone's life, actually, for anybody's day to day, what we do, is to have a roof over our heads, right? Regardless of the money you receive, if you have no roof over your head, that's a big problem. And a lot of people in Ireland waiting for what's going on are not receiving any housing. But till this day, they're still making houses only for Ukraine. Now, this is what the government themselves are doing, and they're not listening to the public. They don't care what the public say. They just want to, please everybody else except their own country. That's when McGregor comes in. And he's someone who wants to take care of the country and wants the country to grow good again. It's not because a lot of people are leaving Ireland. I mean, you yourself, you went to Dubai. A lot of people are going to Australia. I work in construction. A lot of people I've met cannot wait to go to Australia. Even I've been planning to go to Australia. So a lot of people are losing the love for Ireland because Ireland is growing dull because of these decisions. And this can, lose interest in many people to come to the country and not really want to be there anymore, and maybe just come for a quick visit on Paddy's Day, but that's it. With McGregor, I don't know his lifestyle, how he has been. Speaking of only what I've seen, because I don't want to judge 100% if I don't know him 100%. But from the videos I've seen, you can't have someone on presidency either who is involved with drugs, right? You've seen him with doing cocaine. You've seen him with alcohol. You've seen him with different things. I'm not saying he's the only person who's ever done it, but someone at a presidency level needs to have a sober mind and needs to be fit for the purpose of being a president of the country. If he was now again, I see him in fitness again. I see his work. I see he's training. He's training for a fight. He wants to fight Chandler, so on and so forth. It all depends on his life choices. If he was to become clean completely and change his life around and be strictly focused on this and with his heart that he has, then I believe it would be a good idea. Personally, I really believe so. But if it's the McGregor that we know, that we've seen on videos and YouTube and many leaks and many things where there is these influences involved, I don't believe any presidency should be involved with someone who's not sober minded. So it really depends. But I can't say fully. Again, I don't know him. I don't know him at a full degree. All I know is what I've seen.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I think possibly a lot of right-leaning people in Ireland may end up wanting McGregor for kind of the same reasons, But I suppose it is a completely different scenario. So let's see how it plays out. If it does play out, I don't know. You mentioned Chandler. He's been talking about that for 2 years. So maybe this is something else that may never happen. Who knows?
Well, in
Yeah,
all
so
fairness with McGregor.
gone.
No, sorry. Go ahead, man. If you have a question, we can digress.
Yeah, so there's I had a talk with someone just actually in the middle of the night. He was talking about a protest that he was in, him on one side, and then there was far-right people on the other side. And he was talking about, people should definitely have things, first of all, be like careful because, of course, Patrick, you not ethnically being Irish, you'd be affected by that as well. Far-right people look at people that are not ethnically of their own. There's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, with a lot of people that, people are like working class and they feel some type of struggle and they feel like connected to a certain cause, but then sometimes don't realize that the essence of that cause is actually against them. But the cause sees, for example, a young man like yourself who's connected to it, and then look at him and like, okay, we have to change some of our messaging because there's a 1,000 or 10,000 Patricks that may be interested in our cause, but actually what we want is him out as well. Now, I'm not talking about this cause being the McGregor cause or this cause being the Trump cause. I'm talking about that a lot of far right, like the essence of far right agendas, is usually wanting everyone out who is not them. It starts out as the immigrant, and then it gets a bit closer, and it gets a bit closer. There's this joke by Chris Rock. It's there's a lot of slurs in there, so I can't really. But he says like, okay, you keep hearing these kind of rhetorics. You first hear, oh, we want the immigrants out. He said this like 20 years ago. It's interesting that it is such a repeat. Immigrants out, immigrants out. You don't have to listen. Then says, oh, Mexicans out because they're just next to the border. Oh, you don't need to listen. And then he says, this people out, this people out, this people out. And it just keeps on getting closer to what you are yourself, right? And again, I'm not saying that what I just said necessarily
It's
applies
not
to.
directed to me.
Go on.
Yeah, I know what you.
Right.
Yeah, no, as in like you don't necessarily mean that it is directed to me, and I understand what you mean. I don't see it as an attack, just in case if people might take it in a certain way. No, it's not an attack. I know what you're saying. Let me put it this way: when we spoke about the immigrants and about how Ireland could be to say, you know what, we don't want nobody here anymore. Let's get everybody out. I would disagree on that standard, mainly on the fact that I believe anybody doesn't really have an issue with anybody being from any country. It's about respecting the country and it's about showing care about the country. If you look, for example, in other countries like Australia or America, if you want to be a citizen there, live there, permanent residency there, they will do certain tests and they will ask you, why do you want to live here? Because they don't want to bring anybody here. They want to see, okay, you take care of yourself, you're a well-adjusted person, you're organized, and you're gonna bring goodness to the country, not bad, right? So speaking about again the fact of, as we just mentioned, the idea of immigrants. There's been two attacks. One of the biggest attacks that I remember recently has been about a Arabic man when it was near the Garden of Remembrance, very close by. There was a man there who attacked these schoolgirls and a school teacher. And what happened was is that he went to attack them. He got a knife out to go attack those kids, clearly with purpose of cruel intent to kill them. There was no, it doesn't have any logical reasoning behind it. It doesn't matter what the kids could have done. There's no reason for such a behavior. He goes and attacks them until eventually a man who's from Brazil comes over off his motorbike, headbutts the man, and puts him to sleep basically. And then afterwards, then he's arrested and so on and so forth. I believe he was released as well, which creates even a bigger uproar because that day after what that happened, all of Ireland, everyone from the flats of whoever else and the flats of whatever else, was a massive chaos because Ireland, the people felt disrespected. They said, because it wasn't the first time this happening. This was an ongoing thing that nothing was changed. So everyone said, you know what? Let's show them what, because I agree in a sense. I do agree because protests with words don't do anything. They really don't. They'll sit gladly at the top window looking at you, smiling with a cup of tea. They don't give a shit. But it's the fact that when there's actual violence involved, when they saw the Lewis being burnt, or the buses on fire, Garda cars on fire, they had to send a policeman who got injured, and there had to be a riot and chaos. Only from chaos, then they would understand, right? And speaking about the fact of not only that episode, speaking that it happened multiple times, there was an Arabic man, which is another I believe it was Arabic, from what I remember. I'm not 100% sure about this one, but I believe he was, from what I remember. He was on the bus, and there was a schoolgirl at the very back of the bus who decided to sit beside her. And the guy was in his 50s. He was an older man. The girl was, what, 14? She's a young girl, schoolgirl. The way schoolgirls, you dress uniform is in a skirt and so on, and boys have pants. Well, he just sits beside the girl and he decides to put his hands rubbing her legs, right? Completely, as in not just slowly touching, as if grabbing, as if it's his woman, grabbing the legs and feeling her in appropriate ways. And the woman, of course, starts screaming. He then decides to get a knife and tries to start stabbing on the bus. Now, I am not, from what I remember and what I was told, there was no altercation from anyone else, which I'm very surprised by. I don't know how you can sit there and watch that happen and not to go help the girl. Regardless, though, that was another event. And there's been many events with Ukraine, in many countries who are raping this and doing that, and in this country as well. And all of the problems that we're seeing in Ireland has been from people who are immigrants. Now, that's why we look at Donald Trump and we see that Donald Trump himself as well said that, hey, we're not accepting any more immigrants. That's why they want to put a wall, they want to do this, not because they hate the Mexicans, but it's because of the fact of when 80% of the crimes has been because of your country. When you guys came here, you guys only caused problems, murders, drugs, problems, killings, people. you know, if you guys don't respect the country, you guys can't get in the country. And I completely understand that. Now, when it comes to someone like me, I was born in this country. I was born and raised in this country. My family origin is Romanian. I don't believe the issue would be directed on me. I believe the issue would be of people who really come from a different country and come over to this country where they would then decide and say, hey, send these guys back home. There's no reason for them here. I don't believe I personally or anybody in my situation will get necessarily targeted. Now, speaking of, let's say people who, let's say they are immigrants, but they behave well in this country. I don't believe if this law was to be applied in Ireland, I don't believe they would kick all these people out like that. I believe the next following people that will be coming, they won't be coming anymore. And if those people who are in this country now, with a well-built house, with family, with kids, with mortgage, with pensions and so on, if there was any I don't know, I guess any form of crime that could have happened. This is only an assumption, a speculation, but I believe it makes sense that if they were to do something, then there would be a much more stricter judgment on them than if they were Irish. I believe because of all the things that have came to pass to clean up the country, if there is till this day immigrants in this country who do end up behaving that way, the biggest sentence for them is to get out of the country. That's what I would believe. But I don't believe we'll get to the point where, Ireland would kick every single person out who's not Irish. I don't believe so.
The only issue I would have with this argument, because I have heard it be said before, is that any time I've really ever, and I'm not saying violence doesn't happen from all types of human beings, but any violence I've experienced in Ireland, anytime I've been attacked, I've had a knife put to my throat at the back of a bus coming home from Blanchardstown once, and no one did anything. But like in all those situations, amount of times I've been kicked in the face or chased, like I've been attacked a lot more times than I'd like to admit. And I think it's because I spend a lot of time walking through town alone in my young 20s, and probably looking a bit like an easy target, just listening to my music, vibing out, whatever, that I would, have these things happen. Or even once saving a girl from a guy that was chasing her and kind of like drunkenly kind of following her home and saying things to her. I had to distract him. In all these situations, it was just an Irish lad. It wasn't someone from anywhere else. And I feel like sometimes the problem in these scenarios is when it is someone else, we make it about them where they're from, and we don't think about where they're from for all the times that they're just from your hometown. So I don't know. I feel like sometimes that argument gets a bit lost in the in the nationality, and it isn't applied when it's just someone from Ireland. You know what I'm saying? I actually think a lot more of the crimes that happen in Ireland are probably from Irish people. Now, I don't have any statistics on that, but that's been my experience throughout life. So
I agree. But I believe the fact that what's going on now with the housing crisis, because that's the main center point. What's going on with the housing crisis, what they feel is that the Irish people who are from that country, who have not left that country, who have stayed with the country, not went abroad, looking for housing, they are put on the second list. That the people who just came to the country, who are just new to the country, they are put first. And that's why there's an uproar. That's why then when they see, well, okay, these guys just came, and now look at the amount
yeah,
of stuff that's going on since they came with the crimes and so on. I think that's where but I believe, as you said, I agree completely. This is just a new occurrence, and I believe that's where the upset and the anger is coming from. Well, these guys are new in the country, they're getting housing, and they're also committing crimes. Crime is everywhere, though. I mean, crime is going to, even in the UK, even whatever. I don't believe it's tied necessarily with the national aspect. It's not the fact that Ireland is innocent and like, oh, we never had crimes, now we do because of them. No, I believe because of their crimes, they feel like with all the crimes they're doing, they're also getting reward. They're getting housing, they're getting this, they're getting that. That's what I believe really where the anger is coming from.
why do you think that is? Why do you think the EU, not just Ireland, but the EU in general, why do you think they're like? And I'd be curious as well, Obi, if you know the reason. Like maybe there is a straightforward answer to this, or maybe I'm just very disconnected from Ireland over the last few years. But what do you think is the main reason that we we are so easily, readily able to provide housing for so many expats or people from other countries, and yet not be able to look after our own when there is a housing crisis? What do you think that actually is? And I mean, surely the country does care about their own people. So why, right? I can't imagine
Um,
Politicians genuinely don't want the best for their country, so but then are able to hand it out to people that are just newly there. So what is that? How does that make sense? And where do you think that's actually coming from?
well, I do have an answer, but Obi, would you like to answer first, or will I
No,
go
no,
ahead and
please
answer
go
it?
on. Please go on.
It's very simple. Greed, first of all, with politicians. The honest truth, the government cares about themselves, right? Main principle, what they care about is themselves. And as cold as that is the truth. That's why I mentioned just previously there that for me, I'm gonna be honest. I never understood riots. Not riots, sorry. Protests. Riots is different. Protests. I never understood protests. I don't understand the idea of spending 3 hours as 100 people there on the street and just shouting because nothing is going to change. Has anything ever changed because of these protests? No. You're just going there for 3 hours screaming and shouting, and then you go home, and the next day happens again. You go to work, and nothing has been changed. But that's why when there was a riot, when you saw all the guys from Ireland, youngsters and so on, burning and smashing, and sometimes violence is the answer, and sometimes violence in those moments is the only way something can change. Um,
But did
so
something change
speaking
from?
well, there has been precautions. They have talked. They were a bit on ease, but the violence never continued. It has to be almost a war. I'm going to be honest with you. I believe the only way you can make a government change is when there's a full country behind it, and a complete dedication for change. Because they have no issue with just sitting there and waiting you guys to let out a few words, get angry, and then relax after an hour. They don't really care. Honestly, they really don't care. That's why there's no change. The reason why Ireland is helping other countries is because of favor. That's why they're helping Americans. But first of all, helping Ukraine creates an alliance not only with Ukraine, but helps an alliance with America as well, because America's helping Ukraine. And the first thing, okay, if I'm helping this guy and I see you're helping with him, then we all connect already, And even Trump himself, I mean, he even mentioned about Ireland as well. He spoke of Ireland in one of his, when they had a chat, in one of his, I guess there's a word I'm looking for, but they were basically having a conversation, a meeting, an interview. That's what I was looking for. So they were having a meeting and an interview, and he mentioned about Ireland, and he mentioned about the house crisis. And he said that's a great thing. He said because that means a lot of people want to be there, and a lot of people love the country, and you don't really hear of having a housing crisis because if there's a housing crisis, that means that the country's doing very well, and more people want to be in the country. There's clearly a connection, and America's always had a connection with Ireland, believing they were very proud of some sort of ancestry and that they're very close, and so there's definitely a connection. I believe it's more about favor and about having allies, and who knows, maybe the president himself is worried about the war going on too. Ireland is a very vulnerable country compared to the rest of the countries. Ireland has no chance against, Russia and so on. But if they were going solo, or they're a neutral country, but that doesn't mean that because they're neutral, no one's going to attack them. Doesn't mean that no one's going to fight them. They are neutral. They have no enemies. But again, it's a country that someone can just say, "Hey, let's just take it. We have more resources, more whatever." If a war was ever to break out, so I feel like Ireland's looking for favor in these moments, and they say, "Well, the people don't change anyways. They almost look at the people, to put it this way, as if they have a little bit of anger at one moment, and they just shout a little bit, and then after they get better, we put some event or we put something to happen. We say a few words to make them feel good, and then they go back to whatever they were doing. They just try to calm the people down, and then they keep doing what they do. Because at the end of the day, people have to work. Don't no, nobody. Some people don't want to leave the country because they don't want a new life. They're almost trapped. Some people are almost trapped in that idea. So they don't really care. That's what I mean. There is a form of, the idea of greed where we don't really care about you on anything that benefits us, a very bit more self-centered. And as well as I believe there is the idea of war. Because war is right now, it seems like it's on thin ice. It's very on thin ice. All it takes is one person to do a wrong move. That's all it takes. And the amount of power they have now compared to World War II, I mean, those tanks, they're not going to do nothing compared to what there is now in all of these countries. From a one button, the whole, whole country can go flying. Like, And the amount of power now, that's all it takes is one person to make a mistake. So I feel like it's Ireland, the people in presidency and in power, they're just looking for favor and they don't really care about the public. The only reason they'll care is when there's a bit of offense from the public. You know, that's really the best answer I can give you on that, and probably the most honest answer.
Yeah, I understand what you said regarding rights, etc. Sometimes, in other countries, in third world countries, like something close to a civil war is the only way to make the ruling class understand. However, while I similarly, my type of protest is not a demonstration either, that's not my type of protest. I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss it because I know many people that were in protest, just standing around and shouting, like you said, and stuff actually did change. Like big changes were made. Many things where people were just demonstrating, encampments inside of the Trinity College. Trinity College changed their minds on things after people were just, in inverted commas, standing around and shouting. Now again, this type of demonstration isn't my type of protest, but I have seen it literally working. So good for them that it worked for them, but in a more divisive country, which isn't, well, Ireland, I would say. But well, although of course, in many ways, Ireland is a divisive country. Many different countries currently hate Ireland because they are standing up for their beliefs in freedom and your right to demonstrate things that you disagree with. Anyway, yeah, that's just what I wanted to say on that matter. But I also think that, you said to think about the stabbings, etc., and thinking that you will be necessarily targeted in the push for immigrations to be like deported, etc. The thing is, many people that are in your situation in America are now fearing for their lives because judges, Patrick, judges. That's a white American judge Trump pushed to get deported because she was against something that he wanted to push, right? Such as throwing legal citizens into El Salvador. There's like a big case going on. I don't know his name, but there's this guy I don't know where he's from. He's from South America. I don't want to say something wrong. He's from South America somewhere, and he was put into the same prison that all the people that they consider to be gang members was put in there, and then they later realized it was such a big case that even that because Trump never wants to back down, right? That he wrote this in his, I don't know his book, whatever it's called, Art of something, right? He wrote it in his book, Never Back Down, Never Back Down. So he's not going to admit it, but his administration, imagine how big of an F up you must do that a Trump administration that said never to back down actually admits that they have someone in those prisons that is actually not a gang member. But they're refusing all of the judges again, who are saying, listen, this guy is a legal citizen that you misidentified and threw into those prisons. Throw him, you have to get him back. And they're just ignoring the rule of law. I can foresee some of that answer being, okay, if you do something revolutionary, there's going to be collateral damage. That is collateral damage. But if you are ignoring the rules and laws that you said that you believe in, what is to stop them? And nothing clearly to get people like yourself deported, voted and believed in their cause, right? So again, you are someone who thinks, okay, this clearly doesn't affect me. A white American judge is affected by it. So how would you say that you would not be affected by it in the future? Is my question.
Speaking of that, I am not sure 100% of what nationality he is truly. If he is just an American, he was born and raised in that country, a white American, regardless of white or African American or whatever, but he is an American. It would be weird. especially being
So
American. If he was Mexican, it
just
would
need
make
to
more sense.
So there's two different people. So the person that was sent to El Salvador with the people that they assumed that they're gang members. By the way, none of them were allowed to be in front of the judge to put the case. So they literally picked them up from the street and threw them into the prison. So maybe all of the other ones are also innocent. Who knows? Anyway, so that guy, I don't know what his name is, El San, I don't know what his name is. But this guy, they admitted that they misidentified him because it was such a big case. That guy who is Latin American, right? But they're refusing to
Mhm.
take him back. And like they are admitting that this guy is not meant to be there. They're admitting it. And then my question was at first, what is to stop them to do further harm? And the answer to it before you answered, I said, it's nothing because now they're attacking people that are like judges. I'm saying white judges who think they should not do this. They're attacking those judges and picking them up off the street, legal citizens like Gestapo, right? Nazi Gestapo, picking them off the streets and putting them somewhere, verbally torturing them and getting them into silence, you know? So my question again was, if they're doing this to white judges, who again, you would expect a judge to have much more protections compared to you, to yourself and me, right? If they're doing this to white judges, why would you say that this wouldn't affect you? You, someone who is certainly, you of course are not saying something that is against Trump or against McGregor if he was to do the exact same things as Trump does. But it could be that you are saying something as a joke, right? And then they are taking it as you meant it serious. And just like Joe Rogan said in his very famous recent video, he said, okay, I just meant it as a joke. Well, no, you didn't. You have to go to El Salvador. You have to go to, but I just meant it as a joke. But then he said like, well, no one knows because there's no due process. Due process means you can go in front of a judge and explain yourself. None of the prisoners, or thousands of people that are in those prisons, was allowed to be in front of a judge, Patrick. Some of them were picked up because they went through houses of suspected immigrants, and others were picked up based on their online history. So again, what is to stop him to whoever says something, maybe you make a joke, let's say, oh, Trump is kind of crazy. Oh, well, that is terrorist activity. You can't say anything against it because you will never see a judge. You'll be picked up and thrown into prison. So again, what is to stop someone like him who may be having a rise in Ireland to do that to someone like you who is much less protected than a judge is? That was my question. Sorry about it.
Well, let's put it this way. Speaking first of the fact of El Salvador, that prison was made for the president of El Salvador wanted to clean up the streets because there was so much drug cartels and issues going on that the country was going into havoc. And he himself stood up and said he was a new president from what I remember. I'm not entirely sure, but regardless though if he was new or not, he said he wanted to stand up for it and clean up the streets. And every single person from every gang, you were taken, you were taken, you were taken. There was no need for a discussion because it was well known who these people are. It was well known for what they do and their behaviors. There was no need for you to go and dismiss your case when we know that you've killed and we've seen you and there's proofs and we know who you are. You are well known in the country, right? So I completely understand why there wouldn't be a waste of time, put it that way, for a case because the case is completed from the beginning, right? If you are a well-known drug dealer in the place and you're wanted, let's put it this way, you are a wanted person that everyone knows based on the judges and everything, then you're going to be taken straight away. Now, speaking of the fact of the white American who was identified wrongly, and he is someone who actually is completely innocently. If this is true, because again, I don't know, there is a lot of fake news. I'm not saying you're saying anything fake. I'm just speaking of my own. That this is from words that I'm hearing. I do like to be really sure of what I'm saying always. If it is true, then certain. If it's not true, then whatever. But let's just go by the fact of trusting everything sources that it is true. And when this did happen, If he's innocent and had nothing to do wrong, then it is very weird that this man was kept there. The only reason I can imagine this man would be kept there is if there is a history behind him. There is something behind him where maybe he had some form of a connection with those people. Because keep in mind, you can be a judge, but you can still do crime. It doesn't matter. We've seen this plenty of times with people who are on high levels of some a certain path of careers in either if it's with law or if it's with businesses or whatever it might be. Elon Musk or whoever, it doesn't matter. It's you can be in a very high status of a career choice, right? But regardless of whatever you could be doing, you could still be doing something on the side. There's many corruptions, even in the police force. You're someone who's meant to protect the law, but there's many police who will turn the other eye just for the sake of a bit of money on the side and let them do whatever. So there is corruption, regardless of being just the judge. From all we know, that judge could have set a lot of people free who were involved in that kind of thing. Maybe there was gang members where he knew the judge himself and said, you know what, he's not guilty. But in reality, he was guilty, right? So we don't know a lot of context. And I believe America as well, of course. I don't see, it wouldn't make sense to me to grab one because it's such a small amount. It's one person. I don't believe America would just strictly go and attack one person. If America was to do something like that, because it's a waste of time and it's very childish to attack one person. I believe if it was something big and serious and they wanted to do something like that, they would attack a multitude of people to bring to that prison. I don't believe it just would have been one person. Maybe he was, as you said, he was, mistaken by who it was. But I believe the reason if he's still there till this day is because even though you are the wrong person we were looking for, you are still a person who was involved, who was a part of it in some certain way, in some way big. As I mentioned, as a judge, you could just let someone free. And if you're someone who's corrupt like that as a judge, you can imagine the damages. Now, again, this is all speculation. This is all trying to get a more common understanding because, as I said, if it was just one person, it would be very silly from America to do such a thing. I believe there had to be a real meaning there that maybe we weren't aware of the information.
So Trump, a long time ago, wrote a book, The Art of the Deal, right? And one of his big rules is to never back down, right? To never back down, because if you keep on trying, if you keep on saying no, no, that never happened, along the way, a lot of people will start believing you, right? So he ran with that in his first presidential election, and he has run with that again, and he's someone who doesn't. It's not even if it's 100% the fact, he will just never admit to it, right?
Can I can I
It
can I
is
ask? Can I add
silly.
something to that?
Go on, please, please.
Can I add something to
Sure.
that? Speaking of that, I
No,
hope I didn't interrupt you.
no,
Apologies
no,
if I
go on,
did,
go on,
but
go on.
it's the fact of with the never back down. I don't believe the never back down is an absurd idea where it's like, even in my wrong, I never back down. I don't believe it's something like that. I believe, um, I believe what he meant is I think it's as clear as day when he got shot. When he got shot and almost lost his life, he never backed down. He came back for a second in presidency to help the country. He never backed down. I believe it's a never give up attitude for America and for his country that he loves. I don't believe it's something where if whatever he does, I will never back down. I don't believe it would be something so
So petty,
as
yes.
silly, so petty, and as
It,
that would be a bit
mm,
absurd in my
that would
opinion.
be
I don't believe
absurd,
he meant it
yes.
like that. I don't believe he meant it like that.
I hope that you are correct. However, now I haven't this president election, to be honest, I expected him to win. I'm just gonna be totally honest with you. It was very obvious to me. Just I told this to people in 2021. It's like it's a given. Just the way he like maneuvered these like Congress again or whatever, it was extremely obvious to me. So I didn't do much research. But in the first one, I did a lot of research, and considering my research, could be wrong, it could be wrong. I am very sure that it holds on to grudges, and it would be within his character to do petty things like that. That doesn't in any way like wash away the part where he was shot at and he stood up tall, and both of these things can exist in the same character, right? Both those things can exist, right? People are flawed, right? Considering what I think I know, of course, again, like you said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I'm thinking that his base, his very dedicated base, very, very dedicated base, He has a lot of very dedicated people that no matter what you say against him will believe that everything he does is for them. It appears that the thing that he does is more for the ruling class than the common man, but neither of us have enough information to where we could have like a political debate. I'm going to hope that what a lot of what you are saying about him is the truth more than what I think I have seen from him so far. So hopefully, they will get that guy, if he's totally innocent, like I heard in the news. Hopefully they get him out of there and he doesn't attack the judges that say one sentence against him, right? That would be very petty, right? Let's hope that he's not that type of person. Yeah, I wanted to move on to another topic, but you can certainly, yeah.
Just one final thing that I'd love to just discuss on Trump very, very shortly. And just a quick answer back and forth. You mentioned of him that now I feel like I don't know exactly what maybe you have seen of him. I've seen a lot of moments where he's talked to other candidates. He's talked to other people. He's talked in interviews. I see him as a man who really uses his head. I see him calculate. I see the words he says and what he says is calculated. To think of, because you have to look, the actions of a man is what shows that a man he is, right? And from what I see of him as a person, I don't see someone foolish personally. That's why I'm happy to see that it is what it is. I see someone who is calculated. I see someone who's devoted, and I see someone as well who's generally smart. When I've seen him in interviews, you knew how to cut the person in 3 or 4 seconds in a few words. He didn't get angry and start cursing everybody there. In a few lines, he made understood that, hey, you're crossing a line or you're speaking a certain way, because you know how it is with the news. They try to catch you in certain ways and they try to make you make a mistake or get you aggravated. And we've seen people who have gone upset and that's what they want. They want this, so they get views and they get money. They don't really care about you. That's very common in the news. And Trump knew very easily how to dissect the whole situation. And I feel like someone like that, I cannot see personally. This is not saying that I am a full, I am a patriot to America or I'm with Trump or when I see real, I speak of it. When I see that someone is truly, he's wise, he speaks well, he has a good heart for the country. I see a devotion, I see there's changes being done. The moment he hit presidency, there's already a massive things happening for the country. How many people have we had in the presidency where they promise and promise, but I don't even think they maybe even done 20 or 30% of the things that they've said, right? But he's already on track. He knows very well this is his last possible presidency. He has 4 years to change this country into something better, and he wants in his 4 years to make the country change completely. With someone with that character, right? I cannot see how he could be, as you say. Is there something that you've seen, except the story of this Latin American thing and so on? Is there anything you've personally seen that, because I have never seen, where Trump has shown a selfish character or a not considerate character towards people and in general? What have you seen that's giving you this idea of Trump that there's two sides to the coin where he shows one face, but in reality has another face at the back of it all?
To be honest with you, I probably have like 500,000 things that I've seen, if I'm going to be totally honest with you. But I can give one example and just move on to another topic. So when Biden and Harris were still in office, and they worked on this for years, they got people from the Republican side, they got people from the Democratic side to band together and create this bill that would like have the best border policy that has ever been created. I forgot the name of it. Like they were about to release this. It was last year. And Trump used his influence on the Republican side to stop this bill, to get people from the Republican side to say, oh, sorry, I'm not interested in this anymore. Oh, sorry. And then he said publicly, for this bill, you can blame me for not having this go out, right? He did not want to give Democratic side a win, although actually it was bipartisan, meaning it was Republican and Democrats that were working on this for years, the most historic border policy. And he stopped it because he did not want to give the side a win. Now, does this sound a little bit petty to you, would you say, Patrick?
Well, I would need a bit more information about it to look more deeply into it.
No, naturally. No, I'm just saying in the case,
But-
let's say what I'm saying somehow is 100% correct. I'm not
Mhm.
saying for you to like say, oh, I hate this guy now. I'm just saying just from those things that are said, suggesting it would be 100% correct. What does that sound to you?
Oh, manipulative. If he was playing a manipulative act the whole time, that doesn't show somebody you can trust, of course. But as I said again, it would show a manipulative nature. At the end of the day, democratics are meant to be for the people. I'm gonna be honest. I am not 100% knowledgeable of what party means what. I do know democratic means to be for the people, but if he is using manipulative strings where he's avoiding to help the people, then of course I could see that as a problem.
Yeah, and no, certainly appreciate that because a lot of now not I, but I was scrolling to YouTube and there was this. Is it Jubilee? Jamie, have you ever heard of Jubilee? Jubilee, you know the one where they have these clickbait titles like one Republican and
Oh yes.
defending himself against 25 liberals, and then one Democrat defending himself against like MAGA supporters, right? And in one of those, there was this guy, Charlie Kirk. I really don't know anything about him, but he's Republican, like really Republican, and he was
Oh, he's
defending
huge,
himself
actually.
against these guys, and these guys kept bringing up like stacking all the deck, like hundreds of accusations against Trump, and he was like just like they were like saying, okay, let's say what I'm saying is true. What do you think? And he just couldn't, and it was very strange to see. But unfortunately, a lot of people, I'm just going to go play devil's advocate in their favor, which is of course if you're disenfranchised, you are working paycheck to paycheck, and then you see someone and you only watch the news, like from the Republican side, you only watch Fox News, you only watch, I don't know the other ones, I just only know Fox News, right? You only watch things that show Trump in a certain light. Then of course you are going to be there. Okay, this is our person. This is our man. He's gonna do everything that we stand for. Bring back traditional values. Bring this and that. So of course they're going to be there fully, and they don't have time during the frigging day. You know, Patrick, yourself, you said you do construction to the late hours. They don't have time to go research all the facts. You know, they're looking at this person. They've seen that in the news. Hey, listen, Fox News is it appears to be a very legitimate news organization, right? And that's saying one side of it. Of course, you're going to think this person is the resurrection of. So, politics, of course, they're on both sides. I mean, Democrats are, can be very manipulative as well, right? Another thing is, it's just out there, but you can literally look this up. Trump, during his first presidential election and presidency, his first one, he told the most lies of any president in history by like a factor of tens. In his first, and there's like a billion of those, right? There's a
And what
billion
exactly
of
was
those.
his lies?
I actually thought because during his first presidential campaign and administration, I actually thought he's a new guy, he's a rich guy, he can be admired, he has a lot of successes, right? That part is also not true, but this would just take 500 years for me to get it, but I believe that as well, right? So, okay, listen, this guy is just funding himself. He's a voice for good, etc. He's not funding himself. I don't know if you heard about that guy. He was like FTX, like a crypto thing. There was this guy, like the biggest crypto scam of all time, and like the right winger, were like saying, oh, listen, he funded the Democrats, right? He funded the Republicans more than the Democrats, and literally even like the most left-wing people don't even know that because of how manipulative certain people are with messaging, right? And it just never ends in the first president election, and it just never ends. The amount of just everything. I can't even point to something he said in his first president election that was true. I can't point to it. I'm sure it exists. I just can't point to it. In the second one, I'm not gonna go through all this again. I already know that he's gonna win because in the first one he didn't have the support of like again Congress. And to be honest, I don't even know what those do. I know that supposedly if you want a law to be passed, that they go to Congress or Senate. Or, again, I don't know. But in this election, by the way, he's ignoring them because they said to bring back that innocent Mexican guy. They said it. The Supreme Court said it, and he's just ignoring them, by the way. Anyway, the biggest judge system in the world, like they said to bring him back, he just ignored them. Anyway, in the first one, he didn't have support from them. Like for this election, he appointed them. Even the people he appointed are telling him to bring back that guy from El Salvador, and he's ignoring them.
But just a question, because
Go on, please.
I'm sure that I am not the only one who is probably listening to this podcast who might be unaware.
Sure.
My dad, now not gonna go too much into personal name, but just in very short, briefly, my dad is very into politics. He studied a lot. Like he watches consistently. If there's any person that I can ask to look for answers, is him, right? And even he himself has agreed, that same views upon me with Trump. Now you mentioned there's certain lies and there's certain things, and there was many lies. Now, can you at least elaborate on one of those lies that happened to be a lie? Was it a lie that he said he would do something and never did? He lied about himself. He lied about his own life. What was the lie? Even one, even one lie, just so I get an idea.
Sure, the wall never happened. Less than 1.5% of the wall. Do you remember that when he said, "Let's build the wall, let's Mexico pay for it"? He didn't build it. He built 1.5%. Supposed 30,000 lies, the most of any U.S. president in the history of the United States. So the wall never happened, and everything else of his policies didn't
but what about the Mexicans that tried to cross the borders and saying that they've went over the wall and these things have just been false?
There is a wall already. You see, there is a wall already before he ever was president. There is a wall. He wanted to make a better wall, a bigger, a beautiful wall. I can't really, imitate him very well. Like you never have ever seen before, right? That he likes to say.
A bigger, stronger, right? Yes.
Right.
There's no way to pass it on, that idea. Yeah.
Right. I would imagine that anything that was, if you go into a test, right, and you make 2% of it happen, do you think it was successful, that test, or it was not successful?
Well, I will say this. We have to judge the fact of that there was a lot going on in his presidency, right? There's been a lot of things going on. We don't know, again, it was a project that was started. Sadly, it wasn't finished or even close to completion. But now, again, this is just speaking in an idea. I don't necessarily believe it was necessarily a lie. I just believe it was a word of his that was not necessarily completed or fulfilled. He did clearly put his hands into doing it. He clearly did have a decision. I am not sure exactly what probably stopped the cause, because you can have many plans as a president, but certain things can happen where it can cause delays, and might take some time, and it could have been something that it would have happened. I'm not sure exactly. That probably avoided. I don't believe he would have put so much money into it at the beginning as he did, planned out what he did, put some time into it, and then say, you know what, I think I did enough. I don't know. Judging in that
you're
way.
right. I mean, we don't know what I don't have ears inside of the White House, right? So you're right. Of course, I don't know. It's just that there's so many of those things, and by the way, are always very endeared to how well you speak, and also how you clearly have a way of strategic thinking, critical thinking, right? So if you are faced, like let's say, with a lot of information, 26 women coming out against him saying he sexually assaulted them, and him having 34 felonies, and him going up to a 10-year-old, Patrick, and saying that he wants to date her in 10 years, and him going to beauty pageants and grabbing them by the pussy, and him, there's like a billion of those examples. That's just one side. You would think that he may not be a person that you would want to vote for, right? And this is just on the sexual assault side. But like he has more than not more than Weinstein, but he's more than people that we would never ever put in the presidential election, right? And that's just from sexual assault side. But then there's so many more. Like we consider him a very successful person in the business side. He has 6 bankruptcies. There's no successful person that has 6 bankruptcies, right? There's so many things. It's just never ending. Like in the 70s when he started out with his business, he would have kind of struggled with you. Like you with the Romanian, by the way, Trump in the 70s would have struggled with you because you have a Romanian background. He may have not given you some of his rooms, even if you had the money. With a black guy or Indian guy, just straight up would have never happened. It just never ends. It never ends. From, if you look into when he started his business and till now, it just never ends with corruption and lie. Because I didn't want to get into it, but it just never ends. Because in the first president election, I looked into this. I was like, oh boy. But of course, again, he did pick the right base, and I would never, and truly never, actually do not think that his base is stupid. I think his base is, they're just misinformed, and they don't have time during the day. They don't, listen, no one has time. No one has time. And if you are, like you said, he was in the interview, treated himself with respect. He said, listen, guys, I know what you're trying to, and I have always said, people told me, oh, Trump is freaking stupid. I said, guys, he's not stupid. He's not stupid. He's dumb at times, a lot of times, but he's not actually stupid. That guy is a smart guy. He's corrupt in his business side. There's proof for that. But, you know, he's very calculated. Like you said, he's very calculated. He knows what he has to do to get the base on his side, and he has done this. He has done this. You can see him in a lot of pictures with a lot of rappers, right? With him smiling, that smile, that is very famous smile. He knew who he had, what he had to do, and where he had to stand, what he had to say to get the people on his side, right? So, and that is a form of intelligence. Anyone saying something different is, you know, is also delusional, right? I hope that, let's say, for some strange reason, you find out that I'm correct. I just hope that doesn't disillusion you to think that everyone who ever will in the future try to become president, try to become a teacher, etc., is the same. Some people are different. I just hope that you are more right than I am about people like Trump. I just hope that you are right, and maybe what I have researched and found out is incorrect. Let's hope that it is. Let's hope that the very, very damning evidence that I came across
Well,
since he was
I'll say
a
this.
child is all incorrect.
Well, I'll say this, right? First of all, let's go on with the very beginning of sexual assaults. This is the first thing. This is the first matter you brought up. 24 allegations of sexual assault. There is a lot of women these days. A lot of women. Speaking of the fact that we even spoke of McGregor, about that lady who he was with. McGregor alleged because saying that he raped her, right? If there is actual video where they've went into the hotel, hugging, laughing, smiling, into the rooms. Of course, no camera then afterwards, but then a camera afterwards, walking out, laughing and smiling. Someone being raped or someone being brought like that in some sort of way would not be coming in laughing and smiling in and out. But McGregor was still fined by the judge for to pay a certain amount of money. And she started thanking her family. I don't know. She started thanking as if she won a big massive event. Like if she won the lottery, she couldn't have done it without her family. She couldn't have done this. Like, and it was all a setup for McGregor. McGregor lost big because of it. And this is not a common practice, especially nowadays. It is very easy for a lot of women to hurt themselves with a hammer or something, to do something to themselves where they will say, hey, this guy did that to me. And there's a reason why there was 24, because Trump is a multi-millionaire. It has happened to Tate. It has happened to Ronaldo. It has happened to many, many. Mike Tyson as well. Mike Tyson met a lady who was at his door, flirting with him, comes at his door at night, has sex with him. Later on that day, then afterwards, says that she was raped and he went in prison for 6 years. Can you imagine? And this is something that is the same thing with Donald Trump. With Donald Trump as well, those 24 allegations, thank God nothing happened. But I really believe, I truly believe, when a man with that amount of money, even the idea of rape is very weird to me. Rape in general is wrong, but how can I put it this way? I just don't see it. Women will fall on you who, keep in mind, those women, of course, don't care about you, they care about your money. They will fall on you just because of your money. There's no, if you get what I'm saying, there would never, ever be the, ever space for something like that, if you get, even though there never should be. But just the idea. I would highly disagree, just because of the man's status, because of the money, the business, the values, everything he brings across. A woman who finds him attractive and well, attractive for his money, and he finds her attractive is what I meant to say. They aligned, they met up, they probably had a night together. I would not be surprised that that woman then would try. And I just believe they're complete false accusations in my part, 100%. The one with the little kid, I am not sure about. I have heard that before. But keep in mind, there's always media that will try to make something out that has never happened, right? I personally don't believe. I very very I cannot believe ever that Trump would go to a 10-year-old girl and tell her, I wish you were older so I could, I don't believe it. If he was that way, if he really was that way, and he grabbed ladies by the pussy, as you said, and so on, I don't even believe he would have even a chance to be at the podium to become a president. I don't believe any of these things happened. I'm guessing that grabbing by the pussy is an
I
allegation
can
by one of
refute
the
that, by the
girls.
way. And also, there's, do you remember when he was on TV? There's like 20 examples of that saying that he would have sex with his daughter if it wasn't his daughter. Do you remember that? There's video of it.
Nah, I don't believe that.
There's
There's no
video
way
evidence of it,
that I
Patrick.
believe
There's video
something like that.
evidence of it, Patrick. And it's VHS. It's not like it's AI. You can look this up.
You can show it to me in your own time, and when we
Sure.
do have the
Sure,
discussion
sure.
again, as
Sure.
if you are still planning as we discussed, it would be great to have another discussion of what I would view then in that sense. But personally, again, if that is the case, that is very wrong, very wrong, and it's not right. I It's just hard to believe because of what I see and
Yes.
being
So,
told.
so just sorry. So again, I agree because so I never really thought that insanely highly of Trump, and even I, before I did all my research in the first president election, and I thought like, listen, that's this guy. He's a billionaire. He's funding himself. He's a wild card. I told this to my to several people that I respected their opinion of, right? I said, like, listen, this guy, he has a new breed, like I was like, hey, this is cool, this is cool. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Some of the allegations went in. I was like, let me look this up. Let me look this up. Let me just not go. And there just was a never-ending rabbit hole. But at the same time, you're right. Certainly, people have a certain addiction to accusing people that they maybe had a certain relationship with, and then that has happened a lot of times where it was found out that it was not the case. It's just that what I'm going by is just the amount of things, not just sexual allegations. I'm just saying the amount of things from when he was an unknown, struggling broker or whatever, right? Not a multimillionaire, right? Before his dad gave him like 400 million or whatever. Beforehand, when he was literally struggling, there were accusations. So if you look logically speaking, from when he was an unknown person, there's allegations and corruption and blah 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 until this day. And by the way, you're saying about if it's really true, why would he be on the podium? Well, because I think you have noticed that he always tries to bend the rules to a degree until it can't be bent anymore. That's why, he's threatening to send legal citizens to El Salvador. He's ignoring the highest court in the United States, which technically shouldn't be able to, but then there's this little clause, but this clause doesn't apply. You see, so he bends the rules. He bends the rules until he can't be bent anymore. And he has done this in business before. That's why he was able to do Trump University, which was by people that he appointed. They called it a scam. People that he appointed called it a scam. So people on his side called Trump University a scam. And it just basically so many corruptions and scams from back when he was an unknown person to today, right? So a logical person would think, okay, while I do think, no, not saying that anyone who doesn't think is illogical. I understand that seeing someone a certain way, it's difficult to acknowledge that the person might be flawed, even flawed. People are flawed. So again, I understand where you're coming from. I wasn't as stuck in my ways about it, but I was a little stuck in my ways in the beginning because I thought, listen, this is Donald Trump. I see him in rappers' music videos, right? He's talked about people reference him. you always know in your back of your head, this is a successful businessman. Well, anyway, that's enough for another day. But he's a successful businessman, right? So this guy is funding himself. He's bringing about change. He's putting, there's a lot of craze on the far right. There's a lot of craze on the other side, and he's like making it much more simple, right? Okay, cool. So I do understand where you are coming from. I do understand, but unfortunately, saying that if all that thing is true, how could he be on the stand? Well, he has actual 34 felonies. Actual. It's on his record, and he was on the stand. There's other people that have civil, I forgot what it's called. So there are ways where you have stuff on your record and you can still run. So yeah, I don't know. We talked about this a lot. I don't know. You want to move on to another subject? Okay, go on.
I just want to add this final part. I believe with the felonies, everybody make mistakes. I don't believe anybody is necessarily innocent. I believe, of course, all of us have made mistakes, and I'm sure whatever past he's had in the past is the past, right? Speaking of, as I said, with all the allegations and scams, let me put it this way. When there's ever a person in history who has power and is a good heart, let's put it that way, there will always be people out to get him, right? We've seen that with now the idea, for example, let's even with the Tate brothers, right? Not saying that they are perfect. There's some things that I disagree with, some things I do agree with, something I disagree with, but they do have an honest heart of helping people. They want people to succeed. They want people to be able to grow, to not be stuck in a life where they could be actually doing better, right? And because of that, they've been alligated. They were in Romania, right? They were alligated. They were attacked. They did nothing wrong at all, but they just wanted someone to say you did wrong so they could arrest them. They took their cars. They took everything. They had no business, and they didn't even get it back. What was the point taking all their money for? Just complete corruption, right? Complete horrible corruption, disrespect towards them. And same thing I believe as well, and this has happened to many people, when someone like Trump is looking for the good and not for necessarily greed because he has money and he's looking for what as I said is honest, he wants the best for the country. There will be false news against him. There will be many accusations against him. There'll be many people who will say, oh, well, he's this and he's that and he's this. They will do anything to put him down, even his own men. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise that even your own men sometimes can show you a traitor side. Sadly, some people are not there for the good of you, So the idea of scam could have been just some people who really have a jealousy about him. Why should we help him? The only person I've ever seen who has actually been there for Trump was Dana White. They've been friends since young. The only person who I see that actually was there for him, honest heart, as a friend, was Dana White. No one has I ever seen ever speak about Trump in a good way. And I haven't met. Maybe I've heard some comments, but really speak was Dana White. They are with each other. I saw them in a UFC event as well. They're always together, but especially recently now. And they vouched for each other and they were there for each other, helped each other. So I don't know. It's a very delicate matter, and it's very hard to judge. But I will put it this way: from what I've seen with my own eyes, seeing him compared to the conversation we're having now, this is something that has to be studied. And I'm someone who's very careful. I don't allow everything to be a yes, even if someone is 100%. This is just being honest. Um, I've seen with my own eyes how he acts, how he performs, what he did, what he didn't do, how he is, and that alone gives me an understanding, right, of really more what he is. But again, this all I will do more of my research. I will look more into it. Next time when you would like, and whenever there is free time, and I'll be more than happy to join again. I really appreciate the time you have now as well. I'm glad that we did this again, and as well, I will for the next time, if possible. I will see and I will learn a bit more, and I will give some feedback and really make a decision. I can't say necessarily I am for this guy 100%. I support, I wear Trump hats everywhere I go. Definitely not. But when I see someone who I believe is fair and honest and direct, I will be on the person's side. If I had to pick a side and say, hey, Trump or whatever that lady's name was, who was going for the election, I would go for Trump. And I'm glad he won.
Yeah,
that's really it.
to give
If I
him,
could add something, lads.
just to say one good thing. I think he is genuinely funny. I saw him on the Flagrant show, and he was very funny.
Yeah, he's
That's
he's
it.
a nice person from what I've seen as well. Yeah. speaking of his character, he seems nice. But as a person who was in the form of deciding of a country, state, and how it's going to proceed, I believe he's the best pick that we could have, that they could have had for the country. But go ahead, Jamie, if you'd like to.
No, just to
Go ahead,
finish
what
up.
you been asked.
Just one thing I'd like to say. Obviously, I don't know of all the things Obi's mentioning, but just to play devil's advocate, maybe against Bodie is, I don't know. The problem I would say, especially with social media these days, but even news stations, people like Obi very well said, don't have enough time to do all the research from everywhere, which means that most people are leaning left or right, and it divides people naturally. Of course, if you're using social media, you know, they kind of figure you out before you even figure yourself out. Or even if you watch 2 or 3 posts of something, decide this is who you are now, and start feeding you an algorithm which you think is then the news, but of course it's just one side of the news. So on all sides of information, I think people get completely skewed. Obviously, it's great for us because we then get a very interesting conversation of different points of view, but it's hard to really figure out what exactly is the truth, because I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of Trump on any level, or a fan of Trump. I don't think I know enough about the guy, but I do remember on his first campaign of being president, it felt like perhaps Obi's right. Perhaps he lied. Perhaps it is absolutely true that this guy lied that many times. But I would also argue that the left were so desperate, it felt like every single time they could, to just say anything about this guy. And as someone who wasn't even a fan of him, it did smell a lot of the time like there was this energy of just try to get into people's heads that this guy did this or that or any. I don't know. It just felt like they were also trying to make up stuff to ruin this guy's reputation. Maybe because he's a threat to the government. The thing about allegations, it's one person.
Yes, yeah.
No, the thing about allegations is it's one person's obviously opinion against another person. And it's very hard to prove it.
There was a lot of desperation on the left side to like accuse him of all kinds of things. It smelled in the air. And I certainly can agree with that because, like I said, before I did my research, I was like, what is all the desperation? It feels weird. It feels weird. Like let me. I would like to be on that guy's side. That guy being Trump, right? Anyway, thank you very much for all your opinions. But I wanted to maybe touch on the recent death of Pope Francis. And
Yes.
I know that you are certainly a very religious person, and I think you wanted to talk on that as well.
Yeah. So now, as we all know, unless people who have not known until this podcast, Pope Francis has died. Now, I personally, just to kind of clarify, I am a Christian, but there is different denominations, and the Pope would be more referred to as the Catholic denomination. I'm not sure. I don't believe he's an Orthodox denomination, but I believe he's oriented towards the Catholics, from what I'm sure. But regardless, though, either or, I am not Orthodox or Catholic. I do come from a Pentecostal church. But me personally, though, I am just a Christian, a man who believes in Christ and follows the principles of the Bible. Now, about Pope, as we're speaking of, new things happening and certain events that we are seeing the stage now of what is coming up and what can possibly be in the next few years of certain events that can change the world drastically. And I believe this is a drastic one. Reason being is because before Pope died, he was a part of connecting all religions as one. If you've seen it, you would see people, from Buddhism, people from Hinduism, and people from many different other religions, even Muslim, coming together, saying that they have one God, that they should be a new world order, right? Now, Pope has died, and there's somebody now at the moment named Abdullah, and he is declaring himself as the Messiah, basically, right? He is saying that in Isaiah, when it mentioned about the righteous servant, the Bible has many prophecies about Jesus Christ. Actually, there's over 150 prophecies of what Jesus was going to do based on other people, right, who never seen Jesus. These are all written way beforehand. Isaiah was about 800 to 1,000 years before even Jesus even was born on this earth, right? Predictions that what will happen, which have been fulfilled. He himself, though, is declaring that he is that passage, that he is the Messiah, the one to come to save, the one to come to bring the restoration towards the people and to save them, right? Now, speaking of this new world order, and speaking of this man himself, people are speculating. It is a speculation at the moment where they believe this man could be a part of one of the messages in the Bible, where we're speaking of Revelations. Now, I do not agree with it, not 100%. Like, there is a lot that still has to be done. Speaking of biblically and what type of man is meant to come forth, because there's a book in the Bible. The Bible is a very complete book where it speaks of the beginning and all the way to the end. And the end is the book of Revelations, also known as the apocalyptic book. And it speaks of certain events because if we look in the Gospels, the disciples and the apostles have asked, well, the apostles, but they were disciples, but also apostles. They became apostles, well, with Jesus. But regardless, they asked the Lord and they asked, what events will happen that we will know the end times are coming? This was in Matthew 24, I believe. And what happened was that Jesus declared and mentioned there will be wars, rumors of wars, sicknesses, and there will be people who will come in his name saying that I am the Messiah. Now, there's been many that we have seen, but this man himself, speaking of everything that we're seeing right now, he's saying that he is the savior from the Bible and also from Islam. He's saying that he is the one who's the Messiah of all, mentioned to become the next pope. I'm not sure if he's candidating or if he's already in place, established. I'm not sure. He was in front of all, speaking to all in the black robe, a priest robe, and speaking of who he is, and he is the savior of all, and so on and so forth. Now, he is also someone who comes from that region of where Jesus was born in the Middle East, where the scriptures does affirm to us of a man who, in these events, will be a man who is known as, to put it in short, against Christ, also known as the Antichrist, right? When you're anti something, you're against it. So he's against Christ, anti-Christ. And the Bible does speak of certain things that have to be fulfilled, and where we will see that, okay, the end is near. We already know the end is near biblically, but the fact of seeing these events, people are having speculations of him. He is speaking in a certain way where he believes he's the Messiah, he's the one who's going to come save, he's the one who's going to do whatever else. That is for now to see. I cannot say personally that I believe this guy is, because again, things have to be fulfilled of what the Bible says. But it is a speculation, and it is something that is definitely is being pushed with this new world order, because it is something where, even briefly to mention, this idea of coming as one in a religion and coming as one government and coming as everything as one, as to just be a one order power, is not unknown. This is already happening. So, but this is just a step that I have seen personally, and I do see it as something that is quite interesting in the near future, what it could be.
Can I ask, Patrick, when you say we know the end is near, is that what you said? Sorry, what was your exact phrasing?
Well, that we know that we are, as a Christian, we know that we are during a time of the end times, is what you would call it. Yes.
As in, all things happening in reality are pointing towards predictions of, like, Armageddon, what do they call
You're
it?
on the right track. Apocalypse. Well, the book isn't the name of the book is Revelations, as the
Or
apocalyptic book.
Revelations?
Yeah. Now, the idea is this: is that there is a passage, as I mentioned just previously, that the disciples have asked, and the Lord made it very clear of what will happen during those days. The Bible speaks of it as this, actually, as a form of birth pangs, right? So, as a woman is about to give labor, there's certain pains and certain events until the very end. But the Bible does speak that at the very end, same as a woman who forgets about all of the pain that has just happened and sees that the beauty of the creation that she's made is the same way the Bible depicts it. So the Bible does mention there is gonna be famine, there is gonna be worries, there is gonna be certain troubles on this earth. And the Bible does speak even on a heavier standpoint in Revelations, where certain events will happen. And these were also to prepare us as Christians to know. And of course, the validity of the Bible, and of course, seeing, as I said, There's many things, not to go too far off the topic of Pope, but as in short, there's many things in the Bible where has been said and has been done, and predictions and the events that have been proven to happen. And this is another, I guess, example that you can put where the Bible speaks very directly to us Christians about certain events that is going to happen and what is expected to be at the very end, right?
Doesn't this happen every few years, where Christians say that we're in the end of times, and then we keep living, and then, like, isn't this
Yeah,
kind of
no,
reoccurring?
I agree. I agree with that, and that's the problem. That's why I said I am not saying this is what it is, and I agree with you completely. For
Right.
example, the moment of time when it was Hitler, a lot of Christians people back then, when it was Hitler times and there was the killing of the Jews, everyone said he was the Antichrist. Back then, they would say this is the end, this is whatever. Even when COVID happened, right? Speaking openly, not to, they said as well, oh, this is the mark, or this is whatever, or this is so on and so forth, and life continued. That's because a lot
2012,
of,
2012 with
sorry,
the no, sorry to cut across. I'm saying also 2012 was a big one for people, and the millennium 2000. I feel like there
yeah,
was every year.
that's true. But this is the problem, is that there's the truth is, and to be honest, there's Christians who don't really follow the scripture the way it's meant to be, right? That's why there's so many denominations. There's Catholic, there's Orthodox, Methodists, Pentecostals, Presbyterians, Baptists. There's so many that I can go by, and there's so many. As you know, there's what was it called again? With Joseph Smith, with M. I forgot the name of it again, but
The
um,
missionary,
non-missionary. The Joseph Smiths, they are more, not
Mormons,
Mormons. Yes, I was saying Morgan, Mormons, or the witnesses. I forgot their name again. What they
Jehovah
believe.
Witness.
The whole Jehovah Witnesses. Yes, they completely left my mind. Jehovah Witnesses and the Mormons, and there are so many things. And a lot of people, they just say what they sometimes they make their own thing up. To be honest, but that's why it's very important as a Christian speaking this, for anybody on the podcast who is a Christian themselves who listen to this, is to always go by what the Scripture is saying. Because if I just go by, oh, this is what I believe because something connected a little bit, it doesn't mean that, it is what it is. A lot of people, because keep in mind, the passage itself is speaking of the pains and the pain of birth and the things that will happen. And it has been happening. There's been a lot of problems, a lot of famines and earthquakes and so on, and so many events in this world where, as a Christian, you know that the time is near, in that sense, where there will be a massive collapse basically on the earth itself. A great sorrow on the earth because of all of these things adding up together. But they have been more hyped up. Those people have been mainly hyped up and never really went by what the pastor is saying, because the Bible, that's why I said even about this guy himself, there is certain things and events that need to happen for us to know. That's why the Bible depicts of everything that will happen. If each event has happened and then we can say, okay, they went to pass, then yes, we can have an affirmation of, hey, this is exactly who the scripture is speaking of. But if I just see one thing, like, I don't know, I said with the COVID vaccine, the Bible speaks of something like this, to kind of elaborate a bit more, because I'm sure you probably don't know, and even Obi as well. The Bible speaks of, it's very common that it's spoken of, maybe you might not know. The Bible speaks of, when it comes to the Antichrist, there'll be a certain mark, right? And this mark itself is, the Bible speaks of it like this. Now, I can open up a scripture as well if you would like, but I will speak it just in open words. The Bible speaks like this, that there will be a time where no one can buy or sell without a certain mark. And with this mark, it's meant to show an allegiance to this Antichrist. And this is when it's very further on and there's certain things happening where he is in full control. Speaking of this new world order that's happening at the moment, that is visual for all of us to see, the idea of one man in power of all things. That's what new world order is. And then the Antichrist is supposed to be that. Now, we don't know. It's part of the new world order that's showing us signs of something building up. I can't say the Bible speaks of a new world order, but it does speak of one man in power of all things. And basically, with that mark, then you cannot buy or sell. And Christians will be killed because of this mark. And there's many, many different things. It's a very complicated book. And to mention just sections can confuse you. But to put it in short, as I said, they believe because of that mark with buying or selling and how they saw now, how they want to get rid of, for example, credit cards. They're actually starting to put chips in people's hands. The vaccination, they some people thought that that's it. This mark is going to be the beginning, or it's a preparation, or it's something. A lot of speculation, right? And there has been many, but that's why it's very important to look by what the scripture is saying. You know, is everybody still there?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Sorry, I thought
There
Obi
was
was
an
going to button.
answer and a
Um,
half. There was an answer and a half.
what did I miss? What did I miss exactly?
No. That
Oh,
means
as in
that.
my answer was the
Yeah,
full
yeah.
answer.
There was a lot. There was a lot. Okay.
Well,
I can't.
I
I can't even
also
remember
did
what the
ask a
question was.
question there.
I can't even.
The question
Yeah.
was about of how Christians have mentioned that here's the end now, and that happened in the late before 2000s, then happened again in 2000s, then happened again in 2012, then happened again, and a lot of people are believing is the end, is the end, is the end, but we end up living so on and so forth. So my explanation was, in brief, is that they're not following the scripture what it's saying. They're taking something, to try to find some form of connection, and in that connection there's no actual foundation with it. It doesn't go, it's just a quick, hype. Oh no, that aligns somehow, so now it is, so it's more just more of a hype really than actually being what the Bible says.
Yeah. No, that's. I'm definitely not going back to that insane conversation that we had before, but I can see some parallels in what you said, even with the very long conversation we had before, and can definitely see some truth in what you're saying.
To be honest, no, this is very new information to me about this guy claiming to be a
It's very
messiah.
recent.
And
Yes, it's very recent, and I've seen it myself personally as well. It's very, very recent. It just happened maybe yesterday, I think, or two.
what's his name?
Abdullah. If you would like, Jamie, I believe I have you on Instagram. I can show you if you want. I can send you after this, after we finish up and everything. I can send you a link and you can have a look for yourself.
Okay, but sorry, which religion is he with? His name's Abdullah. That's
So I had, like, keep in mind I've only seen this video clip and I've seen people speak of it, but I've never actually got to find out more about him. When we took our break just now, I did have a look at it and I did, look a bit more into it. It's like I saw a video that reminded me of it, and I felt like it would have been great to have a chat about these world occurrences that are setting up a stage. But it is very new. This only happens. Pope Francis only died recently, so this guy comes out of nowhere and he declares to be the next pope. But in his declaration, he's only speaking as, someone who, I guess, the pope idea in the Catholic denomination is that every word he says is from God almost. So every word he says is straight up from the Lord, which is not true.
but
In many instances, but.
isn't a pope Christian? I don't understand. I'm confused to be honest with you.
So I will say this. Now, this is a whole different topic in a whole different thing. But if you want me to go by it, I have no issue at all. To speak of the Pope, right, or speak of even in general, let's speak of Catholicism. The way Catholicism was actually made was in the early times of Jesus, but not necessarily early, but it was around the time of Greek, right? And since then, there was, as you know, the Greeks Hellenized the Jews and so on, and there was a massive of Greeks. The Greeks themselves, they worship various of gods. They worship, the god of war, the god of so on, and love, and whatever else. They were involved in paganism. And Catholicism was when Christ, the word of Christ, was being spread around in Asia and many different places. They have twisted the gospel in a way where they made it in a way where it involved the same still standards of paganism, right? So, for example, as a Christian myself, or even looking at the Bible, right? The Bible never once ever mentions to us to pray to Mary or any form of interference of Mary. The Bible does speak of Mary in a prophetic word from Isaiah 6, I believe it was, where that the virgin will give birth to a son and his name will be Emmanuel, which means God with us, which was the phrase And then, of course, as we know, then the meaning of God with us is that God is on our side. That was the sacrifice of Isaiah 51, I believe it was, or 54, of the pasture of the righteous servant. Now, basically, the Bible never says anything about, if you go to probably you yourself have been to a mass when you were younger, you have probably said it yourself, Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord be with thee, and so on and so forth. To hail is to kneel. Now, the Bible never says anything of those facts of any form of reverence or whatever they want to call it towards Mary, towards a saint, towards any of these things. And people now, they would say as well themselves that they would that because they're with Christ, they would pray to them and they would talk to Jesus. Now, the Bible only ever speaks of a mediator in that way, only about Jesus. It says there's only one mediator between God and man, which is Jesus Christ, who died for the sins of the world. And the reason why there is only a mediator is because of the Bible even speaks of it in a passage. And this is a lot of information, but I'm going to try to cut it a bit short. It speaks of in the passage that sin has separated us from God. And God knows that. Because of our sin, it separates us from Him. If you look back even in the Old Testament, we saw that there was a place when it was time of Moses. This is when certain things were established. As you could, I don't want to say necessarily rituals, but there were certain orders that were done, right? And each had a significant meaning about Christ, and it's very deep. But one of them was the fact of stepping on holy ground. And this was a place where if you were to step on that, you would be completely burnt to ashes, almost in that kind of sense, right? But that was because of our sin. Now, those who were cleansed were able to come in front of in that tabernacle of Moses and so on and be able to speak. Well, it's the same way, whereas there is this gap in between where we cannot have that connection with God because of sin, because God does not, the Bible speaks that light does not connect with darkness, right? If you say you even in 1 John, it mentions very clearly that if you say I fellowship with him, but I walk in darkness, I lie and I do not say the truth, because you cannot have fellowship with God while you walk in darkness. There's no such thing. Someone who walks in darkness and evil and looks for that and says, oh, I'm with the Lord. There's no way, right? Making mistakes is different, but you walk in darkness is a whole different thing. So because of that, Jesus, who died on the cross, who died for our sin, when he died for the sins of the world, he created that bridge. He said, nobody can come to the Father except through me. And that was that bridge that was meant, the mediator that was meant to be between us towards God because of what Jesus did. What Jesus did, that's why it's so monumental. People will ask, why do Christians love Jesus so much? What's about Jesus? Why is Jesus only Jesus, Jesus, Jesus? Because it's a massive thing. And not only that, but of course, as you know, it's we, of course, as Christians, as we know, is God the Son out of the Godhead, right? Who died for the sins of the world for the sake of us, of our salvation. And that's what that means. Now, when we go as a Catholic and we go with certain things that are being orchestrated now, with praying to Him and bowing down to men who are not God, and now with what's in state with, for example, the Pope, the Bible never once ever speaks of anything about a Pope. Never. There's never any idea. This has all been invented. And this idea of that, certain many implements, a priest can forgive you of your sins. If you want to talk to God, you have to go to a confession box and talk to the priest. The Bible never speaks of this. In fact, the Bible speaks very clear that it's a one-on-one conversation with God. God wants from your true heart a relationship with Him. He doesn't have you involved with a priest or someone, because the Bible makes it very clear when it speaks of, as you probably have heard of, many people have, of a day of judgment. Nobody's going to be there except you and God. The Bible speaks of nobody except you and the Lord. So where is the priest going to be there? Where is whenever? And there's many things in that aspect. And with the Pope, they would say that whatever the Pope says is divine. The Pope is, every word he says is as if it's from God's mouth, which the Bible never teaches. The Bible never speaks of any form of authority or power like the Pope. And when we go through the Catholicism of the Pope and what he does, when it was Pope Francis, he went against the Bible. The Bible says very clearly as they who will not enter the kingdom of God. It says very clearly about homosexuals, about, adulterers and so on and so forth, many different things. He is telling other people otherwise. He's saying it's completely fine. He's feeding them false information and fed them false things the Bible does not go by. And there was many, but yeah, so I guess one other big thing, very big thing. You've probably heard of purgatory, I'm assuming. Catholicism made that up, and the way they made it up is in a form of greed. Do you want me to continue on that part as well, or would you like to keep that for a different time? This is very short as well, but
No,
it's
keep going, keep going, keep going. We'll end
so
it. We'll end it after this question. So you can go as long as you want.
okay.
And
That would
yeah.
be great. That would be great. With purgatory, for example, the Bible only speaks of a very clear indication of where your life will go. The Bible makes it very clear that we have a spirit, a soul, and a body. The spirit and soul are so intertwined together that it's almost as if they're one, but they're not. And it's basically us with our, with our minds, and it's basically our being inside of us, right? When it comes to our minds and us in our inner beings, right? And that inner being never dies, as the Bible says. Now, our body, who is connected to that inner being as one, will die eventually, as we know. Now, the Bible says very clearly that's going to go in two ways. It's either going to go into heaven or it's going to go to hell. Now, this is speaking of now to not overcomplicate, but I'll just put it this way. Yeah, so heaven or hell. I won't overcomplicate because there's a lot. There's some called Abraham's bosom, which is another thing where it was a place of rest at one point, and there were certain things. It's very complicated, but at the end of all, and to make it as simple as possible, there is heaven and there is hell. Now, the Catholics would teach the people that there's a middle ground called purgatory. Now, it was very deceiving and very greedful because what they would say is that this is a middle ground where you did some good and you did some bad. So you kind of are in the middle. So you go there to just suffer just for a little bit and then you go to heaven when the time is up. You have like a ticking clock. Now, apparently, if you were to pay the money to the church, to the Catholic Church, to the priest, you'll be able to reduce the time of your loved ones in purgatory. Look at the cathedral that is made till this day. It's full of gold, and the way it's structured, it's a magnificent place, all made out of greed, because of these teachings and because of of the denomination of Catholicism, and again, not only Catholicism, there's many more, but just that one alone, because of a false teaching the Bible never taught once. People then, of course, not knowing really what Christians is about, they will depict that as, well, that's what a Christian means. It completely deteriorates everything, where it can deteriorate someone's belief on Christianity, which was never the true belief. It can deteriorate other people's lives, which is falseness of putting money from a good heart, hoping that that person will be saved when in reality he had no business in any place. And it was all a fraud, right? So all of these things, the Bible never wants. All of these things have been traditions of men that have been made by men and with men with greed. But the Bible never once have taught any of these things. Just speaking of the fact of, as you are confused of, isn't the Pope have to do with the Bible? Doesn't all these things have to do with not all of it? The truth is, a lot of things that you see today,
Oh no,
it's
no, I was confused why you were saying a guy called Muhammad or Abdullah wants to become the,
Abdullah, yes.
because I was like,
Yes.
that doesn't make sense because they're different religions. That was the confusion.
I understood. I thought you asked me that if the Pope is, that isn't the Pope have to do with the Bible. Well, I'm pretty sure that was your question. Doesn't the Pope have to do with the Christians and the Bible is what you asked me.
No, because you said, didn't you say this guy called what's his name? Abdullah?
Abdullah, yes,
Said
yeah.
that he wants to become the next pope, and I was saying, but popes are Christian, so how does that make sense?
Ah, okay. Then I apologize. Then I'm pretty sure could be wrong, but what I understood you said is, doesn't the Pope have to do anything with the Bible? I probably misheard you or
No,
something.
no. So he did actually say. So it was
Oh,
because of
did
the
I?
name. Because Abdullah usually, because Allah is in the name, it would suggest that he is most likely Muslim. So he was like,
Yeah.
like if there's such a name, and then he said the part about the Pope, Christian, right? The Pope being Christian. Isn't the Pope Christian? So you
Yes,
only
yeah.
understood the second part of his question to be his full question, while it was the
Ah,
part, yeah, it was
okay.
actually, yeah, about Abdullah.
Okay. Well, with Abdullah, I have no idea if he is a Christian or not. I believe he is, but I believe he's following a new world order. I'm not saying he is a Christian. I'm saying he says he is a Christian, but he's following a new world order involved with it. The hence where he's saying, the new world order is the unification of all religions. So he's saying Muslims, Buddhists, so on. But in his speech was mention only of Muslims. But then he also still said that he's the Messiah of this of Isaiah, which is trying to say he's the Messiah of what the Bible has been speaking of this whole time. The Bible in every passage that has been spoken of has been speaking of this incredible hope that's gonna be coming, which was the Messiah. But yeah.
So he wants to create a new world order where all religions are connected as one.
Now speaking biblically,
Did I mix that up?
speaking no. Speaking biblically, it's what the Bible is saying is something else. What the new world order is that there is a unification of saying that there's only one God, and that they're all unified as one. That one God is also the God of Islam, also the God of Christianity,
Yeah.
also the God of Buddhist. Actually, it's almost as common as it's getting very close to there's something called the Baha'i faith. I met someone like this before, and a Baha'i faith is I'm not sure if it's maybe that's what it is now. That's probably the actual name for it for the New World Order. I could be wrong, but the Baha'i faith, what they believe is that they are different rays of light that come out of the same lamp, is what they're saying. So they're saying that the same rays of lamp of Christianity, of Buddhism, of so on and so forth, is all meant to be connected to one light, which, in my opinion, is silly because there's clear contradictions in both parts. Muslims believe Jesus was only a prophet. Christians believe Jesus was the Son of God. There's many contradictions. Buddhists don't even believe. They believe, yeah, he was a mighty man, but they don't believe anything else about him. They just believe, that something else. It was I forgot the exact name, but they believe in something else of self idolism, where they become their own gods and certain things. But yeah,
Patrick,
that's the full answer for both of you, both of the questions you asked me.
no, it's such a fascinating subject because I'm curious. Like, obviously, you're very devoted to your religion. Devote. Sorry, it's late here. You're dedicated to your religion. You're a Christian.
Yes,
Sorry, what Christian did you say you were? Just out of
I
curiosity.
just a Christian, just a
Okay,
simple Christian.
good answer. You're right. Instead of trying to segment it, I think I'm half Catholic from the Irish side, half Maronite from the Lebanese side. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like whenever I ask questions growing up, they're like, "Oh, you're just Christian. It's fine. It's all the same." But so good answer. But I wonder if on some level, if you were able to remove your identification with the religion, uh, would it somehow be a good thing? I mean, I know that sounds crazy for someone who's dedicated to the one religion, but in many ways, I know religions bring people together, but they can also rip people apart. There's a lot of issues worldwide because of, I'm on this side, you're on that side, you believe this. Like, I don't know. Would people coming together for one religion on some level kind of unite the world, do you think? Or do you just see it as, I guess I'm asking you as a person more than a Christian, because obviously as a Christian you'd be like, well, no, because my faith tells me that this is the one true God, the one true answer, and
It is, and we'll definitely have more of this conversation if you guys would like more after, as in for the next podcast if you'd like.
yeah, man,
In
100%.
in short, it wouldn't be a good thing because at the end of the day, what's the most important part is truth. There is no point of all of us coming together into something that is not true when there actually is truth somewhere else. To bring one together and say all religions are the same when we see massive contradictions and all, it just seems like what's the point? There's a reason why a Christian believes what he believes is because of many proofs and evidences and many things that back it up. It's not just I believe and that's it, and I just go by it as an anchor to my life. There's actual things in my life that show me that this anchor exists. It's about me if I want to grab onto it or not. And the unification of the world, of our new world order, involves many things. Now, again, speaking biblically of the Antichrist, it involves, to put it this way, a worship of someone else, a worship of you could even put it this way, a worship of Satan, which you've been seeing happening quite often these days, of giving your life and giving your soul and dedications and certain rituals. There's many things, but that's basically the primary target. Where, let's put it this way, the Bible notifies us that the world at the end of all of this will know who Christ is, will still know who Jesus is, will know the truth, but will still follow the other side, a side where it's going to be full of corruption, full of wrong, and full of evil, put it this way, where it's going to be a worship for Satan instead of a worship for God. That's the best way I can put it. So this unification is not good news. It might seem as a team, but in reality, it's actually completely separating away from the truth and going on a path of unrighteousness than righteousness.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think we should end this here because was a really good kind of. I like the storyline. Like we started off, we're talking about current events. We talked about Donald Trump. We were on both sides. We were very adamant, very like stubborn in our ways, and then we talked about something where we could kind of come together in understanding each other and understanding. So I think it was a really nice. It was almost like a movie, and in the end, everyone kind of feels okay about the about everything, right? So thank you very much for joining. It was quite an interesting one. And I'm definitely
Thank you
looking
for having me
forward
again.
to the next episode, maybe next season, where we'll hopefully have the other person on that you can debate. And that will be the big finale. The third movie is usually the big finale, isn't it? In a trilogy. Anyway, I'll leave it to Jamie
Endgame.
to close it up.
Absolute endgame, yes, 100%. Thanks again, Patrick, for your time, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you guys for your time as well. I really appreciate it. Your time is valuable to me, and I'll be more than happy to go for the next one again, especially hopefully that lady will be ready, or whoever it is that will be ready. And thank you again for having me for the podcast of Slim and Light.
This was Slim and Light. Oh, yeah.
Mulțumesc.
Mulțumesc.
Perfect.
Nice. Okay, mulțumesc.
No, thank you guys. Hope you have a good evening. And it was a blast. I really enjoyed the podcast. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, bro.